Hello YouTube! Last episode I said we would need to wait a little bit more until I got a competent device to play Elder Scrolls Blades on to cover the main story of the game. However, after seeing last video, my friend David lent me his phone for a day, and now I'm finally able to cover it after some, well, actually a lot more grinding. So, thanks to David, I can finally tell you the story of the Elder Scrolls Blades, and I have to warn you that after the intro, there will of course be spoilers, so if you want to play this game for yourself and don't be spoiled, well, just don't watch this video, okay? Okay, let's go. So first, let's talk about the main character, the Fugitive Blade. Just like with most other games, there is a canon race and gender for the player. In Skyrim it's a male Nord, as we see in promotional art. In Morrowind it's a male Dunmer, as seen in the official art. In Oblivion it's a male Imperial, as seen in the official art. In Blades it's a bit less obvious, as in this official art he always wears a helmet that almost completely covers his face. But as we can see in this canon art, the canon player art is apparently a male, and it's light skinned, so probably an Imperial, Nord or Breton. Due to the skin tone I would say Imperial, but that could be a lighting effect, so I don't quite know about the race yet. So the Elder Scrolls Blades has a pretty interesting main storyline, and what is one of the most interesting things about it is that for the first time in any Elder Scrolls game we do not start as a prisoner with no previous track record. While it's close, we do know a little bit more about the player than usual. For example, we know that the town where the game is set in used to be the hometown of the player where he grew up, and we hear from Theodore Gorlash, who seems to be a persona of Shior Gorath, that our character grew up in the town, and that one day he left the town for the Imperial city and he became a Blade, and there he was at one point forced to flee when the Blades were outlawed after the Great War by the White Gold Concordat. With nowhere left to go, the Fugitive Blade decided to try and hide out at his own old hometown, where he hopes that the Thalmor Justiciars who are looking for Blades won't find him. When he gets close to his hometown, in the first couple of minutes of the game, he notices that the town in the distance is completely on fire. He then hurries to the town, but he is stopped by mercenaries who are in service of someone called the Bloodfall Queen, who turns out to be the vassal queen over the small kingdom where the town is in. They try to stop the fugitive, but to no avail, as the fugitive fights his way to the mercenaries. The mercenaries then quickly surrender, and they tell the Blade that they came to collect taxes for the Bloodfall Queen, but the town refused to pay up. They tried to force the town to pay up by scaring the townsfolk. When the townsfolk did not pay up, the mercenaries then smashed the statue of the town's founder in the square in front of the town hall, and then suddenly green fire erupted from the statue, and the skies turned dark with storm and thunder. The green flames spread around the town and set the entire town on fire, including even the walls. We later also learned that during this time the leader of the town, the mayor, died when he cowardly tried to hide himself in the town hall basement. The town hall then completely collapsed on his head, leaving the town leaderless. When the Blade enters the town, he encounters one of the few survivors, Junius the Elder, a man who has lived his whole life in the town and has become one of the town's elders at one point. Junius recognizes the former Blade who had known as a kid and tells him that the people in town suspected that he was dead actually. Junius then tells you what happened to the town with the green fire, and he asks the player for help. The Blade has to go and save the people of the town, some of whom were hiding for the mercenaries, and some who've gotten themselves in trouble, and others who were captured by the mercenaries in revenge for not paying up. The player then goes to the abandoned castle in which some townsfolk are said to have fled into. It turns out that after they fled to the castle got completely overrun by goblins. They fight themselves through the goblin horde and save some villagers, among whom they also find Lond, the town blacksmith, who was held captive by the goblins. When they return to the town, the Blade starts to help rebuild the town by constructing a new town hall for the villagers to shelter in until more houses are built. The old blacksmith, Lond, then tells the player that their old mentor, Henrik Sevenswords, is still alive and that he is hiding out in the old arena north of the town. After rescuing more townsfolk and rebuilding the old smithy, he meets back up with his former mentor, Henrik. Henrik is glad to see that the Blade survived the onslaught of the war, and the two of them spar shortly. The Blade then gets back to town and continues to help the town until the greatest troubles are over. While rescuing some more citizens who are held captive by bandits, he also rescues Sashi, the town's Khajiit lore master. After returning her and the rest of the citizens to the town, the Blades hear some villagers found a tunnel under the rubble of the old founder statue. The blade then goes to Sashi and asks about the tunnels, as she is the lore master and might know what's up with the tunnels. But she had no idea that there even were tunnels under the statue. Sashi then asks the player to explore the tunnels, which are likely alien in origin, to see if there's any clue down there as to why the statue exploded into green fire. As the blade explores the ruins, all they found was an empty and apparently recently opened ancient elite sarcophagus. The blade tells Sashi about the sarcophagus, and she thinks there might have been some sort of sealing enchantment on the statue, and destroying the statue might have broken the seal and released the thing that was locked inside. The breaking of the spell would have explained the green fire explosion, according to her. She then decides to venture with the blade down into the tunnels in hopes of finding more clues about what could have happened. But first the blade needs to meet up with Henrik Sevenswords, his old mentor, who Sashi told him wanted to speak to him after the blade returned from the alien tunnels. Henrik then tells the player that he has an informant who told him of some of the Bloodfall Queen's mercenaries being hidden in a forest close to town, and that the mercenaries are dissatisfied with the Bloodfall Queen. Henrik then asks the blade if he can find the mercenaries and hear them out and see as to what is going on. When the blades arrived in the grove where the mercenaries are hiding out, he is forced to fight some of the men until he reaches the leader, who after seeing his men beaten up has been incentivized to talk. He then tells the player that they were ordered by the queen to scare the townsfolk into paying up with the taxes, and that when the town went up in flames by accident, the queen has been furious with them, as that wasn't the intention at all. Since the fire, undead have actually been roaming around to a problematic degree in the entire realm, and the undead have also been ganging up on the Bloodfall Queen's castle, at which point many of the mercenaries fled the castle and decided to join the Greencap bandits, as joining the bandit tribe would be less dangerous than trying to fight the undead for a queen that didn't care about them. Returning to the town, the blade then tells Henrik what he learned about how the entire kingdom of the Bloodfall Queen has been experiencing an undead problem now. Henrik finds this interesting and he's gonna think of how to deal with the situation, while the blade is gonna join Sashi to explore the ancient old tunnels under the town. After the blade had cleaned up the ruins, Sashi learned much of the tunnels. It turned out that the tunnels are part of a burial tomb for an ancient alien necromancer king, who was the ruler of a small kingdom back in the First Era. Due to his gruesome deeds, his successors have wiped him from history, leading to a situation where Sashi can't even learn his name. The two find a hidden lever which opens up a larger portion of the ruins, and they venture forth together in hopes of being able to find more about this Sorcerer King. Down in the ruins they find some old inscribed tablets filled with ancient runes. Sashi is confident that she will be able to translate this ancient alien language, and they then return to the town and meet up with Junius the Elder and told him of their discoveries. He's amazed by the discovery that the town is that old, and he theorizes that the undead problem that the kingdom is facing might be linked to the broken spell on the ruins. He suggests that the player should go and talk to the Bloodfall Queen herself, and perhaps when she hears the troubles that the town is facing and the possible connection to the undead problem around the kingdom, she might actually tone down a bit on her hostility against the town and instead try to help them against their common problem. After fighting his way through the hordes of undead in the land, the blade arrived at the castle and managed to get through the undead that were blocking the entrance to her castle. Once inside, it turns out that the Bloodfall Queen's men have also had their theories about how the fire in the town was caused. However, her men doubt the connection to the undead problems. The player then talks to the queen herself, who explains that most of her men died during the Great War and that she has to rely upon mercenaries to keep the realm safe of attacks by bandits, and now also, apparently, the undead. She apologizes for the fire as that truly wasn't her intention, but she also stresses that her actions against the town were needed, as they needed to pay up. She could pay the mercenaries to keep the entire realm, including the town, safe from bandits. She then discusses the problem with the player and mentions that in the founder statue's rubble, they actually found an ancient looking scroll and some enchanted stones, which don't seem too useful at first sight, but they might be connected. The blade and the queen then decide to work together against their common problem, and the queen sends one of her men with the player to the town as an envoy to relay her information. Back in the town, Sashi translated the tablets and discovered that the tomb once belonged to the ancient sorcerer king Selamariel Lightbringer. Apparently, he was a terrible tyrant who, according to Theodore Gorlash, never quite knew if he wanted to rule the world or destroy the world. And he actually practiced necromancy to conjure up armies on a large scale, until he was finally put to a stop by his brother Valentis, who rebelled against him with the support of other alien kings. Valentis bound his brother magically and sealed the tomb with the enchantment on the statue, which apparently used to be a statue of Valentis himself. After some more research in her books, Sashi then thinks she might have found the final resting place of Valentis, suggesting that they would need to go there and see if his tomb might contain some more clues as to the fate of his brother. As they explored the ruins, the mute ghost of Valentis himself seemed to guide them through the ruins, until they found his burial chamber. In the burial chamber they found a large etching on the wall telling them the story of Valentis and his brother. It showed the image of Valentis and his brother facing off against each other, while his brother used the undead forces, and it showed the binding of the Sorcerer King into his tomb. After researching the mural, they headed back to town. Once back, Sashi tries to decipher the ruins that they had seen on the mural, but she failed to do so as her ancient alien apparently wasn't good enough. She then suggests asking an old friend of hers for help, a researcher named Talerandil, an expert in the ancient Alien languages, who is studying in some ruins further up in the realm. The blade then ventures to the ruins that Sashi had last heard he had been studying. There he finds Talerandil, who is being ambushed by undead, who have also been ravaging the ancient ruin. The player then rescues him and takes him back to the town, where he translates the runes. The runes apparently tell of how Silmaril Lightbringer attempted to conquer the other Alien kingdoms in Tamriel, using his undead forces until his brother and the other Alien kings stopped the march of his forces. With his help, they discovered that Valentis used an Elder Scroll to bind Silmaril to the tomb, and left it inside the statue. This means that the scroll that the Bloodfall Queen's men found was an Elder Scroll, and that they might indeed need it to once again bind the Sorcerer King. The blade decides to go to the Queen and ask for the scroll, but he finds her castle being besieged by undead and necromancers, who are also there to get the scroll to make sure that the Sorcerer King can't actually be bound again and can be allowed to return. But when the blade arrives, the Queen tells him that the scroll has been stolen already by someone, so the Queen cannot help him. The blade then returns to the town and tells Sashi about the stolen scroll. She assumes that the Sorcerer King took the scroll, or one of his loyal subjects. Considering the scroll was stolen pretty recently, Sashi assumes the scroll and its thief cannot be too far away, so they start asking around town to see if anyone knows of any places where it could be. After asking around town, they came up with 4 possible locations where the scroll might be now, and Sashi sends the blade out to explore the areas to see if they can find the scroll. After exploring all locations, they actually did not find anything. Sashi then recommends that the blade goes and questions a traveling Dunmer merchant in town, who usually has a pretty good knowledge of what's going on around the realm. He tells them that there's a lot of undead activity around a place called Dracursed Keep in these past few days. The blade then travels there, and deep within these ruins, he finds an alien lich who has stolen the Elder Scroll. The blade then defeats the lich and takes the scroll back to Sashi. They're then at a loss. They have an Elder Scroll but have no idea what to do. Sashi then says that she has a suggestion. She once met someone while traveling who knew so much of the Elder Scrolls and how to use them that he might be able to help them. As the blade presses her, she lets on that this acquaintance of her is an ancient dragon that actually survived the Dragon Wars named Shulkanak. She tells the player that they will search him out together and that they will see if he has the knowledge on how to defeat the Sorcerer King once and for all. They then travel together to the place where the dragon is said to reside, and the blade then fights his way to the beast. Eventually he finds a large cavern where the dragon sleeps, and as he is woken up, the dragon is visibly annoyed by being woken up and threatens to kill the blade, but first asks why he came here. The blade tells him of the return of Silmaril Lightbringer, and the dragon then shares his knowledge. However, the player must prove himself by facing the dragon in combat. The player cannot kill the dragon, but he must prove his worth, and then the dragon will be willing to help, as even he does not want this world to come to an end just yet. He shares with the player that Silmaril is immortal and that destroying his body will not kill him, but rather his spirit must be bound using an Elder Scroll. The dragon then tells the blade that the Elder Scrolls can affect all possible futures and that the Sorcerer King must be bound to a future where he fails to escape. To be able to do that, his physical body must be defeated and he must be bound by someone with a pure heart wearing the ancient alien lost crown. Although the dragon does not know the lost location of the lost crown of Silmaril. The blade then returns to Sashi and tells her of his new knowledge on the way back to town. Sashi then suggests to try and rebuild the statue on the town square where Silmaril must be bound again. And in the meantime they must try to contact Majada, a treasure hunter who specializes in ancient alien artifacts and who is also a cousin of Sashi, to help them find the ancient alien crown and maybe its incantation. After a while the player finds Majada and enlists his help. It turns out that Sashi had already sent him a message and that he is already on the trail of Silmaril's crown. Majada then takes him into some ruins filled with necromancers with the intent of ambushing the blade. When the blade is instead being able to defeat all of the necromancers, Majala then begs for forgiveness for what he did, and said that they forced him to rat the blade out. The blade then decided to forgive Majala, after Majala told him where he could find the ancient Ayleid crown for real this time. Before trying to find the crown, the player actually asks how the necromancers knew that the blade would come to see Majala. Majala reveals that they apparently have a spy within the court of the Bloodfall Queen, and that way they know everything that the Bloodfall Queen knows. Majala actually says that he knows who the spy is. It turns out to be the mage of the queen. The blade then leaves Majala and returns to Sashi, and Sashi tells that the spy in the queen's court is actually the biggest problem at the moment and instructs the blades to warn her. He travels to the queen and she's enraged. The queen and the blade then attempt to deal with the mage, but he runs away through a secret door. The blade then tries to pursue him and corners him and returns him to the queen, who says that she will torture him until she knows everything that he knows about the Sorcerer King. On his way back to the town, the blade ventures into the cavern where the ancient crown rests and manages to snatch it away from the undead. He then returns to the town where he and Sashi decide to question the people of the town to see if any of them know someone who is an expert on ancient Ayleid incantations, which they might be able to use to bind the Sorcerer King. The townspeople tell them of an old enchanter who disappeared a few months ago, and it turns out that the only people able to help them with the location of this old enchanter are the Thalmor agents in town that are looking for a fugitive blade. To basically everyone's surprise, the Thalmor are actually willing to help to defeat the Sorcerer King, as even they don't want to see this world destroyed just yet, and they share with him the name and location of the enchanter with the player. On one condition: the enchanter is a Talos worshipper, and the Thalmor want to see him killed for his heresy after he shared all his information. Only if the player says that he doesn't have a problem with killing him, they are willing to share the information on the location and the name of the enchanter. The blade then follows the directions that the Thalmor gave him, and he finds the old enchanter in his old hideout. The enchanter helps him by giving him an amulet that allows him to talk to the spirit of Valentis, as he didn't know the incantation himself, but that way he could learn it from the brother of Salamariel that actually bound him all those years ago. You can then kill the old enchanter or spare him. In the end, it doesn't really seem to matter which of the options you take. I left him alive, and it didn't really seem to matter on the outcome of the quest, as long as the Thalmor themselves believe that he's dead. The blade then goes back to Valentis' tomb, where it once seen the ghost of Valentis that had guided him and Sashi to the crypts. Assuming that it was the ghost of Valentis, he went back into the crypts where he found the spirit of Valentis, who tells him that to bind Salamariel they will need to cast the incantation in the way that the dragon told them to, but they would also need to build a marble statue with 5 enchanted Varla stones in its base, and the Elder Scrolls built within. Valentis then gives the player the incantation, and the player hurries back to Sashi. Sashi and the hero go to Junius the Elder, hoping that he can help rebuild the statue. He has an old skilled model of the statue in his house that they can use to try and recreate it again. After gathering the needed materials for the statue, the blade manages to recreate the statue at the workshop of the town. The blade then went to the emissary of the queen in the town, who tells him that the Varla stones were actually also stolen from the queen and that they are kept in an old shrine of Mara near the border of Valenwood. At least that's what the traitor mage from the court told them after he was tortured. The blade then traveled all the way to the shrine and retrieved the Valar stones. When they returned to the town, the blade placed the Varla stones in the base of the statue, and Sashi then tells him that the arena north of town has been overrun by the undead, and that likely the Sorcerer King is among them. The player then needs to go to the arena to stop him, while Sashi goes to the statue to start the binding process, when the player has defeated his physical form. At the arena, the blade faces off against the husk of Salamariel, and when his physical form is defeated, Sashi uses the incantation and his spirit is once again bound to the crypt below the town. Bound forever as long as the statue stands. Sashi then ends the main quest with the hope that in the future a lore master will read out their adventures, something that happened over the course of the last 18 minutes, so yeah. That was the main story of the Elder Scrolls Blades. I hope you enjoyed my synopsis of the story. This game with a lot of frustration, and I mean a lot, because Elder Scrolls Blades is a very grindy game, but I wanted to do it so you guys could experience the story without needing to grind for yourself. Thanks again to my friend David, who was willing to lend me his phone to play the main quest. And if anyone wants to read the entire story again, I really recommend going to the Imperial library online. The library has a literal documentation of nearly all dialogue in the story, and it's been a great help to me to find back some of the dialogue that I forgot over the course of playing this last few months, as I had to stop playing the game for several months until I got a competent device to play it on. Thanks again, David. So, with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, consider sticking around for more lore content, hopefully the others with less frustration than this one. And well, if not, then I hope that our time here was at least fun to you. Allow me to thank the amazing people on screen, my patrons who make these kinds of videos possible, and with that I will see you all in the next video. Bye bye.